All right, welcome back to the Mom Life Hack stage. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Carly Silberstein. I'm the CEO of Redstone Agency, an event management agency based here in Toronto, but we are executing worldwide, especially now with the onset of the pandemic. I am a mom of a 16-month-old, so I am thrilled to be here with all of you moms today. And I am joined right now by Jay Baum. She is a registered dietitian, a certified diabetes educator, and the proud owner at Pometta Nutrition. And she is here to talk to us about feeding kids without a side of diet culture BS. Jay, thanks for being here with us, and over to you.
All right. Hello. I'm so excited to be here with all of you lovely people today. So let me tell you a little bit more about what we're going to talk about today. I have a private practice and we do everything from infant nutrition right up to teens. And we also deal with helping parents repair broken relationships with food. And so one of the things that we're so passionate about, whether it's when we're doing a workshop for starting solids, whether it's, working with clients one-to-one around picky eating or helping teens develop a positive relationship with food, we really want to support parents in figuring out how to create an environment where their kids are going to develop a positive relationship with food, a positive relationship with their body. And I know as parents, one of the things that often happens is we get really overwhelmed or maybe kind of hyper-focused on the nitty-gritty pieces of nutrition and feeding. So it's really common for us to want to try and micromanage what our kids are actively eating in terms of nutrition, their amounts, and it all comes from a really good place. But what we need to do is also prepare them to be able to eat well when they go out into the world and we're not there. So what to do when there's, sugar everywhere, or what to do when they're bombarded with these diet culture messages that are telling really young children that it's time to start in on restriction diets. So I've already told you a little bit about myself. A couple things that are also important. I'm a mom of 2 boys myself, so I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. I have experienced the joys and pains of feeding kids firsthand, as well as working with families professionally for over 10 years now. Before I was a dietitian, I was actually a pastry chef. So I have a huge love for food, and I really approach that connection piece with food and eating in all of my nutrition interventions. And then the other piece is really that I do an intuitive eating approach. And so I'm not going to break down so much today what that means, but I'll kind of give you a crash course. So really my fight song, and this is something that I'm super passionate about, is that I want to help parents raise kids who absolutely know in their very bones that their body is a good body, that all bodies are deserving of care and respect, and ultimately that they are so much more than a number on the scale. Okay, I know that's a big fight song, but that's what I'm here for, and that's what I want to help you guys, all of you, out with. Okay, so I was thinking about what to do. We have a short time together today, and I've done a lot of different workshops for Moms TO, and we often do just starting solids or just picky eating. But today I thought I would do something a little bit broader. That's an activity that I use with the clients that I work with one-on-one and in some of my workshops, and it really kind of helps you figure out what is your feeding style, or how you want your family to approach food. And I think this is often a piece that's missing from nutrition interventions. So today I am going to offer you 2 self-reflection exercises, and you can go about it in a couple of ways. So what you can either do is, if you're feeling comfortable and perhaps a bit brave and want to share some things, go ahead and type some of these answers out in the chat box for other people who are here to see, because I think that sharing our common food experiences can be so powerful in knowing that we're not alone and that other people are going through the same struggles as us, or maybe they're going through different struggles, but it still comes down to how we're feeding our kids. And I think if you want to do this later on, you can take a screenshot of the questions or just jot them down. And I really, really encourage you that if you have a parenting partner, these exercises are really powerful to do together so you can start having these conversations. And the other thing I'll say is that these exercises work for no matter where you're at in the feeding process. So whether you're at the very beginning, you haven't even started solids yet, this is a good exercise to do because it's going to form the roadmap and the building blocks for later on. If you're in a rut and you're having struggles at meal times, like mealtime battles, picky eating, things like this, coming back to these exercises can be really helpful as well. And even if you have older kids, these exercises can be also really helpful just for us, ourselves as parents, to kind of assess where we are at our relationship with food. Okay, so what is family food culture? Really, this is how your family, and I always start with the household, approaches food and bodies and what you want to see happen. Okay, so the very first step in developing your dream family food culture, I want you to take a second and jot out, describe a positive memory about food and eating. So think of something from when you were a child or adolescent, and then once you got that memory, so that positive memory, I want you to unpack it a little bit. So some of the common themes that come up for me when I talk to clients are things like cooking with family members, special occasions, foods eaten while on vacation, or maybe foods that were given as gifts, or sometimes it's more like an activity around food. So in Ontario, I get a lot of people telling me fond memories of apple picking and pumpkin patches. And then ask yourself, what is it about this positive memory? What makes this memory about food positive? So why is it something that you like to think of, like to remember? And often when we kind of unpack that piece, it really does come down to the connections and not just the food or the act of eating itself. So if any of you feeling brave, share. I see a few of you on here. Oh yeah, I see Yoda. Hi Yoda. And Christine, oh, she's having trouble. Okay, so there's a few of you here. Yeah, add your answers. I'll tell you what mine is. My most fond memory about food and eating is actually learning to cook in my grandma's, my almost teeny tiny apartment kitchen that had a miniature stove, a miniature fridge, required her to go grocery shopping daily because it was that small. There was no microwave. There was no dishwasher. And I gotta tell you, the food we made was nothing special, but just spending time with her in her element was so powerful for me. And I honestly think that's part of the reason why I went to culinary school. Okay, I got some good ones here. I like this. So Tia wrote, easy bake oven. Yes, I get that one a lot. I love it. Okay, so we've got a positive food memory. The next step is to describe a negative or perhaps less positive memory about food and eating. And I'm gonna just recognize that for some of us, this can be a really challenging step, because especially if we have anything to do with food insecurity, or perhaps had food scarcity or food restrictions. There may be some trauma around feeding ourselves there, and sometimes we need to unpack that. So if this is bringing up a lot of emotions for you, this might be a sign that this is an area where you could do a little bit more work around repairing that relationship with food. And so it might mean working with a a dietitian or nutritionist who has some expertise in this area. I might be working with a therapist to kind of unpack some of these thoughts. But I want you to think about a less positive memory here. And I want you to jot it down. These, if you feel like sharing it, you can. These can be harder to share sometimes. But what I want you to think about is what made it a negative experience. And for me, if it's not to do with actual food scarcity, well, even then, it often has to do with something or someone telling you that your body was wrong in some way and could not be trusted. So I see a lot of examples about things having to eat more than you were hungry for or less than you were hungry for. So it could be food scarcity and restriction, or it could be that, you know, we come from, or at least my generation, a lot of people of my age and parents of my age really had that experience that you had to clean your plate, or you had to eat all your vegetables before you were allowed to eat dessert. So I'm seeing a lot of answers like that. So being forced to eat something I didn't like or want so I could go to the CNE with everyone, having my lunch being made fun of as a kid. Yeah, so I often brought cultural foods to my all Caucasian school, and I definitely got some good responses to some of the foods that I brought. So a lot of times it's something that's telling us that there's something wrong about our food or our body, okay? Or our body can't be trusted. All right, so now that you've done those, the third step is really figuring out, so what are the most important things that you want your children to learn about food, eating, and bodies? And this answer, just, you know, jot it out, free form, like the first things that are jumping to your mind. And most of the time, these answers are going to be dictated a little bit by your answers to step 1 and step 2. Okay, now, what I want you to think about after you've come up with these things is really, did the events of either of the first 2 memories influence how you ate as a child or even as an adult, and the way that you learned about food and bodies as you were growing up? And then ask yourself, do you still feel impacted by the events in these memories? Okay, so this is something that is really powerful to do with parenting partner. It can also be something that's really powerful to do if you have, say, your own parents, so grandparents who are really involved in feeding, and you have different ways of approaching food. It can be a really powerful thing to unpack this. So I actually did this exercise with my mother-in-law because she came from a very strict, very Catholic, very British background, and had a very different approach to food than what I would like to see in our household. And so just unpacking it in a curious way, not in a judgmental way, can be really, really, really powerful. Okay, so that is the first step about thinking about your dream family food culture. So that's activity number 1. Now I'm gonna go into our second activity, which is really thinking about the feeding roles. And if any of you have worked with me, I see some familiar names on the chat, or you're on my Instagram. Something that I definitely have talked to you about before is the division of responsibility. And basically, it's a framework for telling you what is a parent or adult's job and what is a kid's job. So parents are responsible for the when, the where, and the what. Kids are responsible for how much and whether to eat any of the food offered. Okay, so very simple sounding framework, but in practice, it actually becomes a little bit more challenging, because what we're trying to do is we need to be considerate without catering. We need to make sure we're offering balanced meals. We need to make sure we're doing a variety. We're having appropriate routines and meal times, but at the same time, we have to have a lot of trust and faith in our children. And so that's basically the idea that once they come to the table, your job is done. There's no more micromanaging. You need to sit down and enjoy your own meal and let them decide how much to eat of the foods offered. So this can be so tricky. And I often have a lot of parents who tell me that they know about the division of responsibility, they think they're doing it, but they're still having mealtime battles. So if this is you, if this is the case, I have another activity to kind of unpack that a little bit. So in terms of implementing the division of responsibility, if you're not sure if you're doing it well, or you're thinking that there is some areas where you're not perhaps doing it, I would want you to ask yourself, okay, do you have any consistent or ongoing struggles in your home? So with kids, so common thing is that between school pickup and dinner, my kids are asking for snack after snack after snack after snack. Or, I can't get my child to sit at the table at all. They're always getting up, and meal times are terrible because all I'm doing is telling them to sit down. Other things might be, around conversations about asking kids to eat certain foods and them saying no or declining to try any foods. So what I say is identify any areas of conflict or even just tension, things that are making you feel stressed around meals. And once you've identified this, the next step is to ask yourself, so in the struggle that you just identified, is everyone doing their job in the division of responsibility? So that's going back to this one again, and then really just going down it. So for instance, if your kid is always asking you for snacks between after school and dinner, and perhaps helping themselves to snacks and then not hungry for dinner, can you identify who's doing whose job there? So I would argue that in this case, the child is doing the parent's job because they're deciding when and what to eat, right? Even perhaps where. But then as a parent, you may need to assess, like, is it that I actually need to add in, a more robust lunch? Or is it that I need to offer an after school snack? Or is it that dinner's being served too late? Like figuring out some of those pieces, that's the parent's job. And then, in an example where the kid is saying, I don't want to eat this, and I'm going to go and get something else from the fridge. It's the same. You're allowing the kid to do the parent's job. Okay, so those are the two activities I wanted to do with you. And then the other thing I just want to throw out there is that, sorry, I have got a very scratchy throat today. I've been talking pretty much 3 days straight now with workshops and clients. So the other thing I want to point out is that as parents, we really don't automatically know how to feed our kids or how to talk about bodies. These are things that take practice. These are things that if you're feeling, tension or worry or stress around, it makes sense to get help before it becomes a problem. And I think that I noticed that a lot of parents feel somewhat nervous about approaching a nutritionist or a dietitian because they think that we're going to judge what they're eating. But remember, I just told you that I used to be a pastry chef. I just told you that I really want you to be able to offer all kinds of foods to your kids. I really do think that all foods fit. And so one of the things when I work with families is that we do it as a partnership, and we really work to figure out what works best for you, okay? And this is kind of going back to the body piece. I have a lot of clients who tell me things like this. So this client I worked with for a while, Leah, and she said, as a mother, I feel like it's my job to break the cycle of failed diet, shame, guilt, and never feeling worthy for my family. I want my daughters to feel and to have a healthy relationship with food so that it doesn't consume or define them. And I really think that as parents, that's what most of us want. Sometimes we just need a little help getting there. Okay, so it looks like we're getting towards the end here. I have 5 minutes left. So if you have any questions, I have the chat open. I'm going to close. Yeah, so I have the chat open. I can see if you're adding anything else here in questions. I'll have a few minutes to answer a couple of them, and then where to find me. So best place, if you're on Instagram, come join me over on my Instagram page at Feeding Kids Intuitive Eating. Share tons of great free resources there, tips, strategies. I'm routinely bringing other people on to do some lives, and it's just a fun place for me to connect with you. I also have a website, so meta.com, and the other thing I'll throw out there is I do free 15-minute discovery calls. So if you're thinking that you're not sure if we'd be a good fit or you want to find out more about my services, that's a great way to connect. And the other thing that I'm offering, so for MomFest, on any of my 3-month packages, I'm offering a 10% discount if you attended MomFest. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions here that maybe I will just pop into, and I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see everything better here. Okay. All right, in the chat. So I have, okay, my 9-month-old does not like anything grainy. How do I make him, eat solids with different consistency? Yeah, so sometimes that can be really challenging. A lot of kids really dive into just one texture. So usually what I start doing is small baby steps. So if they don't like a certain texture, I don't just give them that texture. I think of ways of combining it with other foods. So if it's something like yogurt or smooth or applesauce, thinking about using it as a dipping sauce or something like that. And this is something that I work with clients because texture is so individual. And what we usually do is figuring out where your kid is starting at and how we can move them to the foods that you want to introduce to them. Okay, so this sometimes is a one-to-one topic. Should you make your toddler stay at the table, even if they are done or have decided not to eat? So I am really big on picking a small time frame for your kiddos to sit at the table. What I usually, a toddler, it might be as little as 5 minutes. And I don't have to eat. Mommy, daddy would like to enjoy your company. I like to use visual timers. So if you Google visual timer, you're going to come up with something that you can just set. It's if you have Alexa or Google Home or something like that, you can also set that. I don't like using phones because I don't want to encourage the phone coming to the table. And then letting them sit for that 5 minutes. If they eat or don't eat, great. But then what I would say is after that 5 minutes, letting them go, and you can increase the amount till you get up to about 10 or 15 minutes. But then ultimately you have a set time for your meal. So if you say you started dinner at 6 and you decide like we're gonna end dinner around 6:20 or 6:30, right before you're finished, kind of give a last call and let your kiddo know that if they want anything from the dinner, this is their chance. Otherwise, we're going to clean up and then the kitchen's going to be closed until the next meal or snack. Okay, maybe one more question. Do I have time for one more? I see Carly, is that it?
I'm back. We're 1 minute until 2 o'clock, and we have another amazing speaker lined up for 2, so I have to wrap it up.
So that's it then. Yeah, it goes so fast.
It goes so fast and so much amazing content. Thank you, Jay, for being here with us. I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. And Jay, if you want to leave your Instagram handle and website in the chat, everyone can find you to continue the conversation. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks.